Welcome to your daily dose of sci-fi adventures. New stories dropped every single day. Smash that subscribe button and ring the to help us reach 1,000 subscribers and unlock even more epic cosmic tales. Nova Thorne stood at the rim of the Gravdome arena, her breath visible in the thin, recycled air that the Zephyrian engineers struggled to pressurize. The vast circular pit below was a tapestry of crushed sandstone and gleaming metal plates, stitched together with luminescent lines that pulsed in time, with the throbbing hum of the energy grids beneath. From this height, she could see every scar in the sand, every scorch mark, every chunk of shattered armor that marked a fallen champion's final stand. Her heart drummed in her ears, a relentless cadence she barely noticed anymore. 14 adversaries had already bled out or shattered here, their names chanted gleefully by the masses wagering fortunes on who would be next. The Gravdome's transparent canopy arched overhead, trapping the scorching heat of Zephyria's twin suns by day and at night, magnifying the artificial lights that turned the arena floor into a stage for spectacle. Nova flexed her fingers against the cold grip of her composite durasteel gauntlets. The suit she wore was standard issue for Earth Fleet officers, but she'd modified the internals herself, a compensator in the left pauldron to regulate sudden G-forces, a feedback array in the boots for zero-grav maneuvers, and a microfiber lining to wick away sweat during intense plasma exchanges. Everything had to be perfect. A single miscalculation would spell her doom. A crackle in her comlink jolted her back to the present. Dr. Imani's calm voice filtered through the static. Hiss Nova, the holo shield is calibrated to 0.0 to vac, but it can spike if you take a direct grav lance hit. The med team's on standby. Just stay alive long enough for extraction. Copy, Nova whispered. She knew the extraction was a lie. If she didn't win, there would be no rescue. The Zephyrian Council didn't tolerate dissenters, and they profited most when an outsider fell. Still, Dr. Imani had been her friend on the Argo-class frigate Dauntless, and Nova would have done anything to spare her mentor's gentle worry. Below, the last remaining opponents faced each other, Nova and Drakkar Voss. He was a mountain of a man over 2 meters tall, veins pulsing with bioengineered enhancers that marked him as the Council's prized champion. The rumors said he was bred from warbots, his reflexes honed in zero-grav combat simulators since infancy. He wore no faceplate. His grizzled jaw, tattooed with the Council's emblem, glinted in the relentless sunlight. A second, smaller dome sealed around the pit. The crowd's roar swelled into a deafening chorus, amplified by acoustic projectors, until the inside of Nova's helmet felt like a pressure cooker. She took a final survey of the arena's edge, for access gates for the enforcers, hidden sniper, nests in the towers above, and all around, the sea of spectators, bankers, merchants, thrill-seekers' eyes shining with the lust for violence. The announcer's voice boomed through hidden speakers, warped and mechanical. Tonight's climactic duel, Supreme Champion Drakkar Voss versus Challenger, Earth Fleet veteran Nova Thorne. The crowd erupted, half cheering for the champion's continued reign, half chanting her name. Betting odds had swung wildly when Nova toppled the previous contender. Nova exhaled slowly, her pulse thrummed like a hyperdrive warming up. She checked her gear. Plasma pistol with 2 full coils, wrist flare grenades armed, secondary vibro blade strapped to her thigh, and the holo shield emitter flickering to life. Satisfied, she stepped through the access hatch. The automated decontamination girders hissed and spat ozone. The gate behind her sealed with a pneumatic thud. She landed in the center of the arena with a controlled roll, sending a rust-colored spray of sand into the bright light. Voss mirrored her movement, the grav lance on his back unfolding into a lethal spear crackling with electric blue energy. His eyes, cold and unyielding, locked onto hers. Fight, he rumbled. The single word carried the weight of a death sentence. Nova's chest tightened. Memories flashed. The smoldering ruin of the mining colony on Epsilon V where she once led a convoy under pirate attack. The whispered drills of her crew as they practiced maneuvers in microgravity. The hollow ache in her throat when she watched her best friend, Lieutenant Samar, die in her arms. All of it had brought her here to parlay pain into steel nerves. She lunged. Their first clash rang like a sonic blast. Nova's vibro blade sang as it met the Gravlance's repulsor field. Sparks cascaded across the sand. Voss's swing felt like a battering ram. She twisted on her heel and ducked under the arc, slicing a shallow groove in his shin plating. He stumbled briefly but recovered instantly, his broad shoulders absorbing the impact. The audience held its breath. Nova felt the world narrow to points, her opponent's eyes and the tip of his weapon. She dashed left, using the microdash implants in her boots to vault over a sandbank. But Voss anticipated the move, spinning on the balls of his feet and thrusting the grav lance upward. The energy blade hissed inches from her chest, enough to strip away her vest within seconds. Nova slammed her gauntlet into the lance's shaft, redirecting it sideways. It burrowed into the sand, sending tendrils of energy sizzling through the grains. She ducked low and fired her plasma pistol. The secondary coil's green bolt streaked through the air in a slow arc. The grav lance, locked in the sand, prevented Voss from dodging. The shot cracked against his shoulder, scorching the armor. He reeled back, a red-orange ember blossoming on his pauldrons. A cheer erupted, but Nova barely registered it. Adrenaline surged. She sprinted forward, engaging her holo shield. The thin blue veil shimmered in front of her. She thrust her blade forward, aiming for the seam behind Voss's knee joint, but he spun, catching her wrist in a meaty grip. Metal creaked. Nova grit her teeth, twisting her blade to free it. Pain lanced up her arm. Through the pain came a whispered thought: adapt or die. She tapped the comm link, sending an encrypted pulse. Above the dome, a momentary flicker in the sniper tower's targeting array betrayed the presence of a hidden shooter. Nova had infiltrated the Council's intel network before entering the arena. She knew the Council employed private assassins for dirty work. But why here? Dr. Imani's voice crackled urgently. Nova, fall back and watch for a human arrow. I have a visual on a cloaked sniper in Tower 3. Nova didn't flicker. She pivoted. With all her strength, she elbowed Voss in the ribs, then rolled away. The grav lance slithered free from the sand and crackled back to life. Voss scowled, surprised at her escape. He re-aimed, crouching for a killing lunge. But Nova didn't stay to fight. She sprinted back toward one of the side gates, keeping her eyes on both Voss and the sniper's position. Her holo shield flickered as Voss's grav lance swung again, the energy blade carving a glowing arc through the air. Nova dove to the side, sand spraying. The shield overloaded and blinked out. Pain exploded in her back as the grav lance struck, sending her tumbling. She tasted blood as she spat grit from her mouth. Her vision blurred at the edges, but she forced herself up, arm burning, through the haze. She saw the sniper's silhouette in the tower's window, cloak fluttering in the breeze. Nova realized the Council had planned this duel as more than mere spectacle. It was an execution. With Voss as the blade and the assassin ready to finish any survivor, rage flared. She couldn't let that happen, not just to her, but to every fighter who'd ever lost to the Council's rigged games. She fumbled for a wrist flare grenade, pulled the pin, and lobbed it toward Tower 3. The flare ignited midair, releasing a dense black smoke that drifted up in a column. The sniper cursed. Nova lunged forward while Voss raised the grav lance to shield himself from the flare's shockwave. She seized his wrist and slammed her blade into the joint of his armor. It shattered, the repulsor field collapsing. Voss roared in pain, staggering. But before Nova could press the advantage, the flare's smoke drifted into the arena, both fighters momentarily blinded. The crowd's roar turned to frantic cries as dust and darkness reigned. Nova's senses sharpened, the thrum of Voss's armor as he staggered. The faint click of a second arrow knocked in the sniper's bow, the distant hum of the arena's life support. Nova took a steadying breath, searching for her next move. She knew that seconds mattered. Voss would recover, the sniper would take the shot, and if she wasn't swift, she would be history. Gritting her teeth, Nova tightened her grip on the blade's hilt and stepped forward, intent on turning the tables. In this deadly dance, the arena held its breath, and so did she, braced on the edge between victory and oblivion. Smoke and sand swirled together in a hazy cloud, shrouding the battlefield in uncertain darkness. Nova Thorn wiped grit from her visor, her breath coming in staccato bursts behind the reinforced mask. Drakkar Voss's silhouette appeared, out of the gloom massive, relentless, painted in flickers of blue and orange as stray sparks danced across his damaged armor. The fragment of flare smoke still lingered, drifting like a living thing. But her senses had adjusted. She could taste the acrid scent of ozone from the Grav Lance's high-energy field. She could feel the tiny tremors in the sand as Voss regained his footing, and she could hear, as though through a tunnel, the distant thump of the crowds rising. Panicked, Voss moved first, raising his Grav Lance in a reverse grip. The weapon's repulsor coils hummed, sending a low-frequency vibration up his gauntleted arm. The energy blade extended fully in a whisper of power, casting an eerie glow that cut through the smog. Nova ducked and rolled, her vibro blade drawn. In an instant, its neon green edge slicing through the air. She lashed out at his knee joint, but Voss shifted his weight, the Grav Lance intercepting her strike in a spray of molten metal and sand. Each impact rang like thunder, each parry threatened to overwhelm her defenses. Nova felt her microfiber lining grow slick with sweat. Her legs trembled inside the reinforced boots. The holoshield emitter lay cracked in the sand behind her, a casualty of her earlier retreat. Now, she had no buffer between her and the Grav Lance's deathly edge. She knew the shield could withstand only a single solid hit before collapsing. She had to outmaneuver Voss entirely. She dodged backward, planting her foot to spring sideways. But her momentum carried her off balance. Voss seized the opportunity, swinging the Grav Lance in a wide arc that gouged a glowing trench through the sand where she'd just stood. The ground heaved beneath her. Nova teetered on the edge of the crater, heart thundering. The lance's tip slithered through the air like a serpent's fang, seeking her throat. She could feel its heat through the visor. In that moment, the memory came unbidden. Lieutenant Samar's last words on the command deck of the Dauntless. "Burn bright, Nova," he'd rasped, clutching the plasma-scorched railing as the pirate boarding parties closed in. "Burn bright, and don't go gentle." Nova shoved the recollection away like a broken shard. Now was not the time for grief. She dropped low, tucking beneath the Grav Lance's sweep. As Voss overextended, she rolled behind him and drove her blade upward, aiming for the servo actuator at the back of his knee. The vibro edge bit deep, and Voss howled a guttural sound that shook the very dome. He staggered, and Nova lunged forward, her plasma pistol raised. The green bolt flew true, striking his breastplate and splintering the armor's layered plating. Voss's breath caught. His chest heaved as sparks cascaded across his torso. The crowd screamed in elation, half cheering her audacity, half desperate for carnage. Nova drew a deep breath. She saw the opportunity to end it. Voss's left leg trembled. His enhanced muscles strained to support his weight. One more shot from her pistol could cripple him entirely. But at the same moment, a metallic whine echoed. Above another arrow unleashing from the sniper's perch in Tower 3, Nova spun, muzzle flash illuminating the smoke as the bolt hissed past her shoulder. The projectile buried itself in the sand mere inches from her back. Panic stabbed at her spine. Had the sniper aimed to finish Voss or her? The Council's puppeteers made strange bedfellows in the arena. Voss recovered first, roaring in fury. That shook the air. He brought the Grav Lance down in a devastating chop. Nova barely managed to cross-blade it, metal on metal screeching in protest as her gauntleted forearms strained under the force. She winced as the shockwave rattled her bones. His second strike was already coming faster, more precise. She ducked, the blade slicing a lock of her hair away where it escaped the helmet's edge. With Voss's arms lowered, Nova seized the moment. She pressed her body close to his back, her forearm hooking around his waist. With every ounce of strength, she kicked backward, using her microdash implant to surge with sudden force. The acceleration sent sand flying, dust clouding the tableau. Voss staggered off balance. Nova whipped her blade in a vicious arc, rending through his armored spine guard. The energy field fizzled, and the Grav Lance clattered to the sand abandoned. For an instant, Drakkar Voss teetered on the brink. Nova's chest heaved as she raised her blade for the killing strike, but she hesitated. Images flashed before her, the lonely moons of Epsilon V, where the Council's governors exploited miners until they broke, the secret broadcasts of outer colony resistance fighters calling for unity, the encrypted messages from Kael'Mira, promising a revolution in blood and steel. Was she here to kill a man or to shatter an empire? Voss's head cocked, a spark of awareness in his battle-lust eyes. He lunged, even wounded, even spent. He moved with brutal desperation. Nova barely dodged the jarring charge, blade parrying. Against his gauntlet, the impact sent her reeling, and the moment of pause she'd taken faded into regret. Seizing his remaining strength, Voss grabbed her wrist, crushing the hum of her blade in his grip. She hissed as his fingers dug into the gauntlet, metal biting flesh. He pulled her in, headbutting her temple with the reinforced helm. Stars exploded in her vision. Their world tilted. As she crumpled to her knees, the roar of the crowd fell away. All she could hear was a distant heartbeat, her own fading in and out as if underwater. The world fractured into fragments of gold and crimson. She tasted copper on her tongue. Then darkness claimed her when Nova opened her eyes again. The arena's lights had dimmed to a soft blur. A weight pressed on her side. Voss's armored frame sprawled across the scorched sand. He lay still, chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. His once mighty form seemed smaller now, mortal and brittle. She tried to lift her hand, but pain flared across her ribs. She looked up. Tower 3's sniper perch was empty. The bow rig hauled down. The assassin must have retreated or perished. No triumphant bolt whistled through the air this time. Slowly, Nova propped herself on one elbow. The hush in the arena was deeper than any roar. It pressed against her ears with uncanny weight. The announcer's voice came in urgent fragments through her calm. Medical standby. Champion down. Challenger alive. Standby for update. Nova's vision swam. She blinked. Voss's helmet had slid askew, revealing a face haunted by surprise and something more. Wonder, regret. She couldn't be sure. He met her gaze, and in that dying moment, the assassin's arrow or her own compassion had proven that even champions fall. She coughed, sand and grit tumbling from her mouth. The domes, life support overcame the haze, and the audience's anxious murmurs returned. As if waking from a dream, above, the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, sending long shadows across the arena floor. Nova's chest tightened, her damaged lungs protesting. The Medroids would be on her in seconds. But before they arrived, Nova lifted her blade and offered a silent salute to the fallen champion, a warrior's tribute in the dying light. The dance of death had ended, but the war was far from over. As the Medroids hustled in and the Council's enforcers swept the field, Nova Thorn understood one immutable truth. Survival in Zephyria's arena meant more than skill with blade or rifle. It meant the courage to fight beyond the rules and the resolve to face whatever came next. Nova's mind was a haze of pain. The Medroids hovered at the edge of her vision, stenciling their diagnostic beams across her shattered armor. Council enforcers stall. Black-clad figures with red visors moved in to secure the arena floor. Above the cacophony of pneumatic doors and startled shouts, a single sound cut through, the metallic thwip of a bowstring released. She registered the noise as if through molasses. Time fractured. The distant roar of the crowd receded, replaced by the low, insistent beat of her own heart. Somewhere above Tower 3, a cloaked figure drew the bow again, an impossibly human act in this age of railguns and plasma torches. Nova's head snapped up. She tried to rise, but a Medrone's stabilizing arm pressed gently on her shoulder. Sparks danced across the dome's overhead lattice, and in that flickering light she saw it, a comet titanium arrow, gleaming with midnight iridescence, hurtling earthward in a slow arc. Even as her breath caught, she recognized its path straight. For Drakkar Voss. He lay crumpled in the sand, Medroids pressing clamps to his broken ribs. His chest rose in labored spasms, each breath a tremor of life. The arrow screamed past her ear with a hiss like escaping gas, nicking her helmet and sending a shard of visored glass microfracturing across her right eye. Pain bloomed in a fiery web. She swatted at the shard, knocking her helmet slightly askew, but her gaze never left the arrow's descent. Voss managed to push himself up on one elbow, bioaugmenters in his neck flickering blue. There was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Maybe the droids had managed to stabilize him. But then the arrow struck. It pierced through the left pectoral guard of his armor. driving home with such force that the metal bent inward like soft clay. A gout of golden-brown ichor blossomed across his chest, and his breath hitched once, twice, then stalled. His gauntleted hand clawed at the shaft, as if trying to wrench it free. But gravity held him fast. The arrow's fletching quivered against his breastplate, whispering its death sentence, slowly. He sank back into the sand. The grav lance lay forgotten beside him, its coils dimmed. The medroids recoiled, their diagnostic beams flickering. Madly before dying altogether, the crowd fell silent, the roar extinguished by a collective gasp. Nova felt the dome's pressurization audibly shift, as if the entire field itself exhaled in shock. Her vision tunneled. Every memory of the duel flashed before her, the first clash of blades, the humming swing of the grav lance, the flare grenade's smoke, Voss's roar of defiance. And the moment she stood poised to strike compassion, holding her blade at bay. She'd spared him once, now he lay irrevocably still. The arrow's shaft quivered. Then the hand that clutched it went limp. Drakkar Voss's head lolled to the side, eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the grav dome. The dying sun splintered through the canopy, falling across his body like a funeral pyre. No chant of triumph rose from the crowd, only an awful, suffocating silence. Nova's knees buckled. She slid on her haunches toward him, her gauntleted fingers tracing the shape of the arrow buried in his armor. His helmet lay half buried in the sand, visor cracked, forehead smeared with crimson. Even in death, he looked more human than machina, man betrayed by his own masters. Then, above the stunned hush, a muffled cheer began to swell from the highest tiers. It was jagged and uncertain at first, then grew into a manic crescendo. The Zephyrian gamblers in the VIP pits slapped chips onto tables. Holoodds blinked wildly. The council enforcers raised their weapons, scanning the towers. Nova realized they'd been waiting for this, an assassination masquerading as justice, the final act in a rigged play. But the real Archer did not wait for praise. High on the observation deck, hidden in a break between structural girders, stood Kale Mirror, his rakish cloak flapping in the engineered crosswind. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat, and his bowstring hummed with residual tension. Nova's gaze locked on his eyes, burning cobalt embers beneath hooded lids. For a heartbeat, they held one another's gaze, the veteran champion, the reluctant killer, and the outlaw savior. Kel's lips quirked in a grim half-smile. He lowered the bow, knocking another shaft with practiced ease. But there were no more targets here that she knew of, only Nova, kneeling beside the dead champion, her armor smoking from the devastating blows. Before anyone could react, Kale leapt from the deck, vaulting the safety rail in a single bound that defied satellite-level gravity calculations. He landed at the arena's edge, sand erupting in his wake. Enforcers raised their plasma carbines. Bulltholes blossomed in the sand around him. Kale didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward Nova, eyes never leaving hers. "Nova," he called, voice hoarse but urgent. "We have to move now." She swallowed, but her throat refused to work. The medroid's anti-grav pads glowed gold as they prepared to lift Voss's body. Standard protocol for fallen champions. Nova caught Kel's arm, her gauntlet clinking against his forearm. "Why?" she croaked. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. "Why did you? No time." Kale snapped, jerking her upward. He slung an arm around her waist, pulling her toward Gate 4. Plasma bolts hissed around them as enforcers opened fire. Kale leapt over the grav lance and Voss's corpse, propelling them both forward with the microram jetpack on his back, a stolen prototype from the outer colonies. They skidded through the half-open gate into the service tunnel beyond. The gate slammed shut behind them with a pneumatic hiss. Nova gasped for air, the tunnel lights spinning as she staggered. Kale propped her against the cool metal wall. He touched the arrow buried in Voss's armor. "That bolt," he said, voice low, "wasn't just for him. It was a statement to the council, to everyone watching. They rigged the games, they rigged the odds, and they think they control life and death in this arena. But you're more than their champion. You're a symbol." Nova closed her eyes, the weight of his words settling like lead in her chest. The adrenaline in her veins clashed with guilt and fury. She had fought for glory, she had spared a killer, and now she was on the run with the man who had completed her victory in the most brutal way imaginable. Kale brushed sand from her shoulder. "Can you walk?" Nova tested her legs. Pain lanced through her ribs, but she forced a nod. Kale offered his hand, and she took it. Together they limped down the service corridor away from the neon-lit horror of the arena, toward an uncertain freedom. Behind them, the twin suns of Zephyria sank below the steel horizon, bleeding the sky red. And as they vanished into the bowels of the fortress, the first spark of rebellion ignited in Nova's heart, a flame born of betrayal, grief, and the sharp hiss of a human arrow. The service tunnel's lights flickered as Nova and Kale pressed onward, every footstep amplified in the narrow corridor. Alarms blared somewhere ahead, scarlet strobes casting their elongated shadows against cold metal walls. Nova's ribs burned with each breath, her vision swimming from the shock and blood loss. Kel's grip on her arm was firm but gentle, guiding her through twist after twist of grimed passageways. Behind them, the distant thud of heavy boots. Council enforcers in reinforced exosuits echoed menacingly. Plasma bolts sizzled against bulkhead doors, seeking any crack to pour through. The entire Gravdome complex was sealing down. Lockdown protocols triggered by the assassination and their escape. They were marked traitors, fugitives with bounties on their heads. Kale rounded a corner, skidding to a halt at a maintenance hatch. "This way," he hissed, sliding the panel open with a practiced tug. Beyond lay a narrow maintenance shaft, descending into the reactor sublevels. "We'll bypass security grids down there, then surface on the far side of the Citadel." He pulled Nova inside. The hatch closed behind them, metal scraping like a coffin lid. In the cramped darkness, Nova sank against the wall, sweat and grime streaking her face. "You could have killed me," she whispered, voice raw. "You shot Drakkar Voss like you wanted him dead." Kale checked the corridor above through a ventilation grate. "He was already dying. Your mercy left him vulnerable, and the Council would have restarted the match. Branded you the coward who spared a monster." The arrow was both mercy and message. Voss was a beast, yes, but more, he was their instrument of terror. I ended the terror. Nova's chest tightened. "I fought to win, not to kill a man in cold blood." She closed her eyes. "I wanted honor, not murder." "Honor?" Kel's voice softened. "The Council sold that word to the highest bidder. Look at your rigged games, your champions, your noble victories. They stage violence as sport, then profit off every death. I had to show them the cost." She rested her palm on the tunnel's pipe. The vibrations from enforcer boots, rumbling through the steel. "And now we're trapped. Your people, do they know I'm the one with the fleet's combat data? The one who could rally outer colony support?" Kale exhaled slowly. "They'll know soon enough. But first, we escape." He set his jaw, checking the next grate. "Come on." They slipped through the shaft, descending a rickety ladder into an even darker void. The tunnel widened into a service atrium, half flooded with phosphorescent coolant that coated the floor. In slippery neon green, pipes overhead hissed, venting superheated steam. Nova peeled off her shoulder pauldron, her armor already compromised, and handed it to Kale. "Keep this," she said. "It might buy you seconds against a blaster." He nodded, strapping it to his back beneath his cloak. She kicked off her boots, testing her weight on the slick floor, each step excruciating. Pain lanced through her ribs, but adrenaline blocked. The worst, following Kel's lead, she hopped from patch to patch of dry metal, reaching a catwalk above the coolant. "No more talk of murder," she rasped once they were clear. "I spared Voss because I believed in fighting, not cold-blooded execution." Kel's face tightened. "We all kill on the battlefield, Nova. It's only a question of who gives the order and who pays the price." He paused as they approached. A sealed blast door. "This door leads to the maintenance lift. It's slow, but silent." He pressed a sequence on the panel. Sparks arced. The door groaned open. Inside the lift, the steel cage rattled as it descended. The red glow from the alarms above dimmed behind them. Nova leaned against the control console, closing her eyes. "I want to believe there's a line we don't cross," she murmured, "but I don't know anymore." Kale sat opposite her, kneecap to kneecap. "Then let me show you another world," he said softly. "One where the Council's reign ends and the fallen have justice. You fought for a name, fight now for a cause. Their eyes met. The lifts a steady heartbeat between them. Nova's vision blurred. She swallowed against the pain. After tonight, she said, you'll need a fleet. I have friends in the Earth fleet who will follow you. Kale finished for her, a hard smile cracking his lips. I know you have allies. But first, we live to see dawn. The lift shuddered to a halt. The doors hissed open onto a service gallery overlooking the Citadel's lower courtyard. Motes of coolant vapor drifted like phantoms in the red floodlights. Two enforcers lounged beside a weapons cache, chatting idly. Nova's heart lurched. Kale motioned her down. 5 meters. I'll take the left ramp, you take the right. We meet at the gate. She nodded, blood pounding in her ears. They split. Kale slipped behind a row of stacked crates. Nova darted toward the opposite stairwell. The enforcers fell silent, noses twitching as they sensed something amiss. Nova slowed, pressing her back to the wall, listening. The enforcers spoke in clipped Zephyrian dialect. The one closer stooped to adjust his boot harness, his visor flipping up. Nova recognized him, Lieutenant Harrows, Voss's second in command. His loyalty unquestioned. He looked tired, conflicted. His partner heckled him about the rigged odds. Nova felt her pulse seize. This was her chance. She took a deep breath, flicked her vibro blade on a soft hiss in the steel gallery. Then she burst out, rushing Harrows with a desperate roar. He turned, eyes wide. She slashed the air near his throat just enough to force him to duck. His partner drew a sidearm. Kale leapt from cover, firing his stolen pulse pistol. The bolt struck the ceiling, jackhammering the concrete. The second enforcer dropped his weapon, clattering to the ground. Harrows raised his hands, terrified dismay on his face. Nova's blade hovered inches from Harrows's neck. She could end him here sparing herself further chase, but she remembered Voss's final gasp, the arrow's whisper, Kel's plea for purpose. She stabbed the wall next to Harrows's head, sending sparks flying. Harrows, she barked. You want to live, help us or die with him. Harrows swallowed, pale. The council, they'll kill my family, then choose, Nova said. Voice cold, help us lock that gate, or I slit your throat. He hesitated only a heartbeat before dropping to his knees. Together, Nova and Kale bound his arms with zip straps. Nova grabbed a key fob from his belt, planting it in Kel's hand. The east gate, she said. It opens into minutes. Lock out the beacon and hold it down. Kale nodded. Go. He and Harrows sprinted down the ramp as Nova vanished the same way. To separate shadows in the red-lit gallery, Nova raced toward the control podium for the east gate, firing her pistol at a malfunctioning turret that had begun targeting movement. Around the lift shaft, bolts sputtered against the railing as she ducked behind the console. With trembling fingers, she hacked the terminal, her Earth Fleet cyber tools overriding the Council's security protocols. The gate's status flickered. Seconds later, the east gate shuddered and slid open, revealing the dusky courtyard beyond to sleek grav motors waiting behind crates. Nova's comm crackled. Gate's yours. On our way, Kale replied. Meet you outside. Nova bolted through the opening, squeezing through as the gate clanged shut behind her. The courtyard was awash in twilight, the last vestiges of Zephyria's twin suns. Bleeding through shattered skylights, Kel's silhouette emerged from the opposite archway. Dragging Harrows in tow, they reached the grav motors hovercraft designed for high-speed desert chases. Kale tossed Nova the composite helmet from one of the pilot's seats. Go, he shouted, revving the motor's silent anti-grav engines. She slid into the driver's seat of the nearest craft, strapping in. Harrows climbed beside Kale on the second bike, looking terrified but resolute. Destination, orbital elevator, Kale growled. We get to the ship. We're free, Nova nodded, thumb flicking the grav motor into silent glide mode. The two crafts zipped across the courtyard's fractured tiles and out through a blast door. Into the wild dunes beyond, they rose on a cushion of grav energy, skimming the desert floor at hundreds of kilometers per hour. The horizon stretched endless, dunes rippling like steel waves. Behind them, the fortress's outer walls glowed with sentry beams as enforcers gave chase. Anti-grav interceptors launching into the red sky. Nova's knuckles whitened on the throttle. Each pulse from Ryath's rifle turret lit up behind them, ricocheting sparks from the sand. "Hold formation," Kale shouted over the wind. "I'll draw them off, then you flank north toward the canyon." Nova cut left in a smooth arc. Kale banked right, racing the sentries. Pulsed bolts stitched the air where he'd been. Nova's chest throbbed with pure terror and exhilaration. She dipped low, wheels kicking up molten sand, following the canyon's shadowed mouth as dunes loomed overhead in natural gauntlet. Through the swirling sands, she glimpsed Kale ahead, solo against two interceptors. One interceptor's wing tore off as Kel's grav motor darted beneath an energy blast. He roared in triumph, then veered back. "Get moving, Nova," he yelled. She punched the throttle, grav motor answering with a surge, and plunged into the canyon. The golden dunes gave way to pale limestone walls, the wind echoing like a cyclone. She saw the sloping path to the orbital elevator station carved into the cliffside. Salvation. Behind her, the sound of interceptors fractured against canyon walls. Nova dared a glance backward. Kel's silhouette stood atop a dune crest, facing down 3 chasing ships. He lifted his arm in farewell, a dark flag raised in defiance.